Kelsier is a character that is wrapped in contradictions and mystery. I recently reread the first Mistborn book with the intention of making more in-depth videos on the setting and characters. This will be the first of those videos, and today we'll be taking a more in-depth look at one of the Cosmere's most notorious characters, Kelsier. Now, Kelsier is a character whose arc is far from concluded, and with the events of Rhythm of War, he will likely see a lot more action in coming books. So, while his arc is incomplete, I do still want to take a deeper look at this enigma of a character to try and gain a deeper understanding of who he is and what his goals are. I'll try to keep this video as brief as possible though, since there's so much to cover we could theoretically be here for hours. I'll try to distill the essence of my observations down to a reasonable length. That said, if there's any aspects I failed to mention, I urge you guys to bring them up in the comments down below. Let's get a proper discussion going. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in. Hope. When you first read The Final Empire, the most apparent aspect of Kelsier's character is his embodiment of hope. Kelsier is a scar thief and crew leader who underwent unimaginable psychological and physical torture within the pits of Hathsin. And, as if that weren't enough, he also had to watch as his wife was brutally beaten to death while he was powerless to stop it. And yet, despite this, Kelsier still smiles. Kelsier smiles not only to spite his hard past, but he smiles to spite the Lord Ruler for what he did. But he doesn't just stop there. After his escape from Hathsin, Kelsier commits himself to not only overthrowing the Lord Ruler, but to also help the beaten down Scar rise up and take a stand as they never did before. He wouldn't be able to accomplish this were he just an ordinary man. But, of course, he isn't an ordinary man. Kelsier becomes the very embodiment of hope for the Scar. In him, they begin to see a savior, a deliverer from their hardships. He becomes a living legend to them, and eventually becomes the figurehead of a religion based on his one major message: survive. Kelsier becomes the hope the Scar needs to overthrow the Empire, and he becomes the martyr they need to rally behind when the final hour arrives. Defiance. Beyond just the aspect of hope, Kelsier embodies something even more than that. Beyond just the promise of relief and deliverance from the suffering of the final empire, Kelsier embodies something even stronger. He is the very embodiment of defiance. Born a Scar, he rose through the ranks to become one of the most notorious Scar thieves and crew leaders in the Empire. He defied convention and claimed his own destiny despite the life he would have otherwise had. And even when he was caught and sent to the cruelest and harshest labor camp in the Empire, he continued to defy the forces against him. Every time Kelsier smiled despite his pain and the pain of his people, he did so in direct defiance of what should have broken him. Kelsier laughed when the situation was dire. He smiled when the plans were undermined. He kept going when all hope was lost. Regardless of what life or the Empire could throw at him, Kelsier refused to let anything break his defiance. His very title, the Survivor, indicates defiance. He defied the pits of Hathsin. He defied the Lord Ruler and the final Empire. And when he was finally killed, he resisted and defied death itself. And that defiance is one of the most striking aspects of this mysterious man. Darkness. And now we come to the aspect of Kelsier's character that stands in stark contrast to his other qualities. You see, despite all his redeeming qualities, despite the hope and defiance he stands for in the face of the Lord Ruler, there is a deep darkness within Kelsier. The way Brandon wrote Kelsier may not make it immediately apparent, but when you take a step back and look at his actions, you'll quickly realize just how far this goes. But don't take my word for it. Here's a quote from early on in Well of Ascension where Vin describes Kelsier to Elend. "Kelsier was a great man," Vin said quietly as Elend began to stroke her hair, "but there were things about him, Elend. Frightening things. He was intense, reckless, and even a little bit cruel. Unforgiving. He'd slaughter people without guilt or concern just because they upheld the Empire or worked for the Lord Ruler." Kelsier was many great things, but he was also a ruthless man. He would kill lords and the gods defending them without mercy, even if those gods were Scar who were just trying to ensure a better life for their family. To Kelsier, they were traitors and deserved no more pity than the lords themselves. So yes, Kelsier was a beacon of hope and defiance, but he was also a man that harbored a dark side that many never really got to see. Duality. I think, above all, Kelsier is a man of duality. He's two sides to the same coin. In Secret History, we learn that the power of preservation resisted Kelsier for every moment because he was far too alike to ruin. Kelsier's very existence was almost an extension of Ruin's influence. For 1,000 years, the final empire ruled in relative peace. Yes, there were atrocities and horrible acts committed to maintain it, but it was still a bastion of preservation's power. Preservation himself praised Rashek for maintaining the world, for preserving it for so long. And then Kelsier came and brought the whole thing down. In many ways, Kelsier was an agent of Ruin. He has darkness within him, and would unleash it on anyone or anything he deemed necessary. But he was also a man of unwavering loyalty to his friends. He went through painstaking trouble to care for and save as many innocent Scar as he could. He smiled against the oppression of the final empire and inspired hope in the hearts of men who otherwise would have succumbed to the iron fist of the Lord Ruler. He stood in defiance of a 1,000-year-old empire in order to save and liberate his people. Kelsier is many things, and some of those things can even be debated. But I think the one thing nobody can deny is that Kelsier was a man of duality, a man of both light and darkness. Mystery. One of the most crucial lines Kelsier ever said was that there's always another secret. And whether intentional or not, he actually embodies that line perfectly. He is the very essence of secrecy and mystery. Despite deep analysis, we still don't know what Kelsier really wants. We can glimpse part of his personality and make assumptions based on his actions. But beyond that, there's little else we can do to try and understand him. All of his actions result in more questions than answers. Why did he decline to pass on and meet Mare again? How did he meet the Ghostbloods and become their leader? In fact, what does he even want with the organization in the first place? What was his association with Gavilar? What are his plans with Scadrial? And why did he set himself up as the Sovereign? Kelsier practically oozes mystery and subterfuge. And while I think it's quite appropriate given his background, I still wonder where this will all lead. Kelsier is probably one of the most well-known yet mysterious characters within the Cosmere, another testament to his dualistic nature. I won't claim to understand Kelsier or his motives, but by glimpsing at his actions and his beliefs, I hope I've been able to uncover a bit of this mysterious man. There is a lot we have yet to unravel about Kelsier, and I'm very confident we'll eventually see a lot more of him in coming books. I don't know what he could be planning, and I won't even begin to imagine that I can unravel all his secrets and understand him perfectly. But despite all the mystery, the dualistic nature, the light and the darkness, despite all of that, I 100% believe that Kelsier is the most interesting character of the Cosmere as a whole. I personally wouldn't be surprised if we saw him become the eventual grand villain of the Cosmere as well, but I guess only time will tell. Anyway, that has been it from me for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. As always, my name has been Raven, and I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody.